Hello and a very warm welcome to the STUDIOCANAL Presents podcast. My name is Simon Brew from Film Stories magazine, and this is a regular podcast celebrating one of the biggest and deepest film libraries in the world. STUDIOCANAL's extensive library of over 6,000 films brings together cinema from around the globe. There are musical treats, Can't Stop the Music and One from the Heart, hidden gems such as Take This Waltz and LA Story, and unnerving features such as Jacob's Ladder and Kill List. We're going to be doing our best to explore it all in this podcast. In this episode, we're celebrating a birthday, the 20th anniversary of the brilliant Irish animation studio Cartoon Saloon. And I'm about to be joined by the company's founders, Paul Young, Tomm Moore and Nora Twomey. Among the films we're talking about, The Secret of Kells, a 2009 animated fantasy drama about the making of the Book of Kells. There's the sublime Song of the Sea, a movie that follows the story of 10-year-old Ben, who discovers his mute sister Saoirse is a Selkie. And then there's The Breadwinner, the tale of Pavana, an 11-year-old girl growing up under the Taliban in Afghanistan in 2001. Here's just a taste of those films.
How do you know that song?
My mother told it to me.
And who are you? Human child?
I'm nobody.
Nobody?
I'm Ben.
Oh.
I'm looking for my sister. I lost her down here.
Look at that.
Start episodes of this podcast by just asking our guests just for a little film fact about themselves, like the first film you watched or what got you into film in the first place. Can I start with you, Nora? Is that okay?
Sure, yeah. I guess the first one I remember very well is The Wizard of Oz, not on its original release, but on TV. And I just remember thinking that I didn't realize there was such things as sets. I thought like that wonderful feel in that film with the matte paintings and everything was someplace I could actually go to, that there were places in the world that were like that or that felt like that. So yeah, that's one thing I just that real magic feeling of watching a beautiful Hollywood type film, I think it's always stuck with me.
I love that. Love that. Paul, what about you?
I was just making sure I got the title right, because I do remember, I think the first cinema trip was the Swiss Family Robinson when I was very, very young. And my mother always remembers it because I think a tiger or some big cat gets killed in it. And I shout out in the whole cinema going, the poor wee big tiger, which was always like something my mother reminded me of. So that was my first trip to the cinema, was the Swiss Family Robinson.
So your first trip to the cinema, you broke cinema etiquette.
Yes, I shouted out, the poor wee big tiger. And everybody laughed.
I love that. And what about you, Tom?
I think the first one I remember going to was Snow White. Again, on re-release. It wasn't there in 1939 for the original release, but I was afraid of the witch. And I remember my dad telling me to look at the projection booth, and I could watch the scary bits really small, about the size of a TV, by looking at the projection booth rather than the big screen. So that was my first trip to the cinema and my first introduction to the mechanics and technology of film.
So for people heavily into cinema, we've got one person who shouted out and one person who turned around and didn't look at the screen.
Yeah, exactly.
So Nora, you're the only purist here.
Except I didn't understand what sets were.
We're celebrating here, and from the outside looking in, I mean, it's an incredible story. 25 years of Cartoon Saloon. But it's extraordinary for us on the outside seeing this and seeing what you've kept in place over those 25 years. But I'm just curious, were I to track the three of you down, say, 27 years ago, in 1997, say, 2 years before you set the company up, how would I have found the three of you? How close to the idea of this were you?
Pretty close. 97. We were all in college together. We were all in animation school together,
So sitting on the lawn outside the school.
We were in Ballyfermot. In Ballyfermot College, and all studying there in different years, I think, or I was in 1 year behind Nora.
Yeah, different years, different courses, I think, as well. I was a year ahead of you, Tom, and then Paul, you were in the 3D course, is that right? So was it?
Yeah, well, I was first I did 2 years of the regular 2D animation, and then in the last year, I moved to this this multimedia course in Dame Street. But I didn't do my final year in Ballyfermot. I did the final year in this other course that spun off of it, that I thought, it might be interesting to do this new 3D stuff.
Yeah. So, Nora, you said there about just sitting on the lawn outside. It's just like, I've got a child at film school. I walk past, I see people sat on the lawn. Most don't go on to make something like this. I mean, what was it? What was in that 2-year period from sitting on the lawn then to setting it all up? What made you three different?
Well, I think a lot of people that went to college, so it was a great college and it still is in Ballyfermot. It was set up around the time of the Bluth Studios in order to feed Bluth Studios in Dublin with classical animators and assistant animators. And so we all met in college there, having gotten there through different means and with different ambitions and that. But I think a lot of people who studied around that time went off to work in games or to work in kind of big studios. And I had worked in a factory and wanted to make the most of the time that I had. I felt that the best way to do that was to have some kind of control over what I was animating. So not spending 3 years on maybe a film that I didn't particularly believe in or something like that. And Tomm went to Young Irish Filmmakers here in Kilkenny, which was an organisation that was set up for young people and put fantastic, expensive equipment in the hands of young people and, got them to grow up and tell stories and make films and shorts and all that. And so I think Tomm had maybe a confidence that maybe myself and Paul mightn't have had the same kind of opportunities. So there was absolutely a can-do kind of thing. Which I think Tomm had, which was very infectious. And I think that's what kind of drew us all to, wandering over to wherever Tomm was sitting on the lawn, I think. And, Paul is an amazing illustrator, really with a wonderful sense of humour to his drawing. So, yeah, that was always when I, arrive outside the door with my cup of coffee, that I would always kind of wander towards these two. And, Fabian Erlinghauser, Jeremy Purcell, a lot of people that we still work with today were part of that kind of original group that was sitting on the lawn outside college.
You mentioned there Bluth Studios. I know you've talked about this previously, but for people who don't know, when he splintered out of Disney and set up his own studio, he didn't set it up in America. He did move to Europe. How monumental was that there was someone near to you doing what you wanted to do? The whole adage of if you see it, you can be it.
It was amazing. I think, Tomm, did you apply? Did you? Or?
No, I didn't apply. I had a school friend who had an auntie working there, and I got a tour of the Bluth studio, and I was like 12 or 13 with Ross Stewart, actually, who co-directed Wolfwalkers with me. We went up, and it was the end, I think, of the Bluth golden age. We didn't see it at the time when it was really at its height. It was kind of winding down by then in the 90s. But I think for me, seeing stuff on TV in Ireland as a kid, that this Disney standard, or maybe even higher than Disney at the time, standard animation was being done in Dublin was really inspiring. And I definitely thought as a younger kid that I'd like to work there,
And so, Paul, when you're looking around and you're seeing these opportunities, I mean, Nora mentioned there just your love of illustration. What were the touch points for you? What were the things that you were looking to do at that point?
Well, I'd been to Belfast Art College, slightly older than Tomm, around the same age as you, Nora.
A little bit younger.
So I was in art college first, and I did have a dream to do illustration. I wanted to be a cartoonist, and I did a lot of I was a big fan of Calvin and Hobbes and Bloom County and political cartoonists, and I got a lot of inspiration from comic books and cartoonists. And I went to Belfast to do illustration. It didn't quite have an illustration course there at the time. I did a degree in combined studies of art and design. But what it did have as part of that course was a lot of film studies. I think as a kid, I told the teacher, the principal of secondary school, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said at the time, cameraman, which I think so it was kind of like a mixture of cartoons and cameraman. And then so I got to study a lot of film, like film soundtracks. And what made sense to me then after doing that, after I tried a stint at getting to be an illustrator in Edinburgh and Brighton, I went to visit my brothers. I didn't quite make it, but the job I did as I was doing little bits of animation or illustration was going to the cinema as a cinema steward. I got to see loads of films while in Belfast. So I had a sort of education of film just by watching loads during early 90s, between 91 and 96, 95. So animation seemed like the perfect combination of my love of illustration and animation. So I decided then to go to Ballyfermot, and then met Tomm, who had an idea. I want to make a film. I says, okay, I'll hitch my wagon to your train. And we also started working together just very early on to make money, me and Tom, because Tom had a kid at the time, very, very young. So he needed money. I needed cash. I was more a mature student then. So we started getting jobs, like multimedia jobs, like CD-ROM jobs, and pulling in Nora and her husband Michael and Ross Stewart and different friends to help us do those gigs from our apartments, from our student accommodation, basically.
So you set Cartoon Saloon up, but what came first? Was it the idea for the Secret of Kells, or was it the idea for the company?
Both hanging around at the same time, and they only merged when Paul and I started doing the work as Cartoon Saloon. I'd already sort of organised to do what was going to be the trailer for what was going to become The Secret of Kells in Kilkenny with a small grant from Young Irish filmmakers. Now, naively at the time, I think I thought we were going to make the whole movie in a year, you know, and it was that really, it was fairly naive, but I think we were doing that anyway. And Paul and I had Cartoon Saloon registered as a name, and then when we came down to Kilkenny, both ideas kind of merged because we weren't able to survive just on the grant money, so we were also doing jobs as Cartoon Saloon, and Cartoon Saloon kind of became the official kind of holder of everything we were doing, and obviously became the main producer of Secret of Kells.
And so Nora, as co-director of Secret of Kells, can you just introduce it to us and then just give her a flavour of what it was like making that film right at the infancy of this story?
It's based on the 9th century manuscript, the Book of Kells, which is housed in Trinity College in Dublin, and it is the story of its creation, how it came to the Abbey of Kells, the people who were instrumental in its making, and the beauty of it. It's based in a time where Christianity was kind of taking over from pagan beliefs, and it's a very kind of magical story, really, and it's a story of hope.
It's a miracle, just like Aidan said. Aidan is my friend. I'm helping him make the most incredible book in the whole world. He says it will turn darkness into light. Wait until you see it. Ugh.
Wait until you see the rest of my forest.
Yeah, I guess that's what the film is. It was a journey to get there. I think that when we all came down to Kilkenny, it was 1999, and I think it was 2003 we started production, which was good going actually, because we had no track record besides a couple of short films that we had made. We'd made actually a good few short films at that point. The Screen Ireland, were the Irish Film Board at the time, were fantastic for giving small little grants to just get you up and going and put something on 35mm print and get it in front of an audience at the Galway Film Flower, the Cork Film Festival. I suppose what we'd learned from those shorts, we were able to apply onto the feature, but with the help of incredible producers like Didier Brunner, who was the first kind of producer to come on board and to want to co-produce with us. And that was a huge vote of confidence, which then resulted in other co-producers in Belgium coming on as well. And so we actually found ourselves in that very scary position of, okay, we can actually make this film. And then we moved out of the Young Irish Filmmakers 2 rooms or 3 rooms, I think, that we had there at that point, to kind of premises that we had to pay rent for, and that was a proper professional kind of place. And we started to crew up. And so we went from 15 people to 75 in the space of a few months. We went from a handful of computers to everybody having a computer, trying to figure out the whole production pipeline.
It's just a small line in your answer there about how you jumped from 15 people to 75. Again, one of those small lines that just, I mean, that sounds a humongous challenge to me. I remember, I think it was when Aardman was making Chicken Run and suddenly had to crew up, and there just weren't the people. I think they had to set up training courses at local colleges and things like that. Otherwise, they just wouldn't have the expertise they needed. Were you finding something similar, or was the legacy of the Don Bluth studios there left a bedrock of talent waiting to be untapped?
Well, we had, again, a lot of the people that we graduated with stayed, with us through those years. I remember Jeremy Purcell in particular and Fabian Erlinghauser being really amazing and instrumental in just helping us man the amount of departments that we had, but also we looked internationally, and so we continue actually to this day to be a very multinational kind of, or international studio in terms of the talent that we attract. So yeah, we pulled from talent all over Europe And that was great too, because it really influenced the work that we were doing.
Paul and Tom, you look so calm when there's discussion there of The Secret of Kells, and I'm guessing, therefore, it was a very calm production, a very stress-free time. How do you look back on that now?
I think there might be some kind of mental block from all this. Looking calm on the outside, but inside. It's really funny, reminiscing this year about 25 years of Cartoon Saloon. I feel that I haven't quite caught up to where we are now. And those kind of all or nothing days, those very kind of seat of our pants days are still very close to the surface for me. I still find it hard to believe like how much more the studio has become structured and steady and kind of more competent. And back then we were really making it up. You mentioned Wallace and Gromit, or you mentioned Aardman. I always think about that scene where they're putting the track down in front of the train as fast as the train is moving. That was pretty much what making The Secret of Kells was like. Yeah.
I mean, Paul, that particular period as you're coming to the end of your first film, where was Cartoon Saloon at that point? Was the funding all there? Was it a case of you were still trying to find the rent money or something like that? Was it a more comfortable existence?
Yeah, well, I was acting as the producer along with Tom and Nora, but I was mainly the travelling salesman at that point. I just remember lots of fax machines. But we had amazing help from Didier Brunet and other co-producers to get Secret of Kells set up. We were able to go to Cartoon Movie, which was a brilliant event where you can pitch your film. And how a film was funded in Ireland was very particular back then because of the Section 481, which you have the equivalent of in the UK, where you have like tax incentives to make movies in your country, tax breaks to make movies so you can get your tax back after you finish. You had to have all the money in place before you could even begin principal photography or principal animation. So actually it focused everybody's mind on actually getting what at the time was a 5.35 million euro budget. And so we knew we did have actually the money. That was the one good thing, is we knew we had the money together. We didn't have a big gap. But the pipeline was new to us, and we had lots of help from our co-producers on how to make a film as well and how to sell it. And so we had lots of money coming from France, and we had money coming from Belgium, and we were trying to get our money from the UK and Ireland. And I remember STUDIOCANAL came in through Hengame Panihat, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago, and brought in the UK money. So it was all a learning experience. I mean, it was complete learning. I learned a lot from the co-producers and learned a lot from going to markets, going to Cannes, going to like all the different film festivals, and literally just trying to meet people while you're there to find out where do you get the money. And literally met Didier on the bus from the airport to the event in Cartoon Movie, and basically was harassing him. Oh, we're going to pitch a film, can you come see us? I didn't know who he was. And then I found out, oh, well, Didier was the guy who did Ville Madame and Le Pigeons, which was a great movie. Yeah. We all enjoyed the short film. So, okay, well, if he made that film, he's probably the right sensibilities or taste in films that we'd like to have in a co-producer. So that's how that relationship began.
For many outside of the Cartoon Saloon building and those who'd initially seen The Secret of Kells, it was the Oscar nomination for Best Animated Feature for that film that was a real, with all due respect, it was a who on earth are they to a lot of people. I mean, the obvious question is, were you expecting it? Where were you when you heard about it? But also, what's the impact of that? What happens in that period where you've got an Oscar nomination?
Well, if I recall, we weren't expecting it. Now, we did do the work to try to get people aware of it. Myself and Tom took a trip to LA like weeks before, went to CTN, we showed the film there. And you remember, Tom, there was a DVD sent down there. The first time we were going to show it to a lot of people in America, there was a problem with the sound, and me and Tom couldn't even sit in there. We were so frustrated about the DVD sound, but yet people came out quite excited about it. So we knew there was the efforts, we put in effort to make sure that people in LA and from the Academy could see it as much as possible. But we were having a meeting about dire straits. We recall where we were very cash poor. We had finished Skunk Fu and we'd finished Secret of Kells, and we'd nothing lined up, which was a big lesson we learned, that not to have nothing lined up after you've all. So we went from 75 people shrinking back down to 15. We were worried about where our checks were coming. We were borrowing money from friends. And then we heard a scream from outside the door from Karen, I think. She just happened to be watching the Oscar nominees, and she was like, gee, The Secret of Kells. So we went out and looked, and there it was true. And then the phone started to hop. So very exciting day. And it kind of gave us a great lift at the time because we didn't have money, but we had this very exciting recognition from our animation community, which was wonderful.
I first came across your work on a cinema screen with 2014 Song of the Sea. I took my kids along to it, and what was distinctive to me at that point was not just the beauty of the film itself, but what it wasn't. There were a lot, with all due respect to other films around at the time, of surrogate babysitters around at the time that would like cut to a song or something, or try and sell me something. And this felt very independent, very singular. Can you take us into Song of the Sea and introduce the film for us?
I think maybe if Tom, you do, because it was a holiday that you took, wasn't it, with your son and your wife?
We were in the west of Ireland, in Dingle. We were on a small break before starting Secret of Kells. My wife and I were getting married. My son was 10 at the time, and we were drawing on the beach, and we had to spend a certain amount of time down there in Kerry to get married in Kerry, where we wanted to get married. And we saw these seals that had been killed by local fishermen on the beach, and that kind of upset my son a bit. I remember we talked to a local woman who we were renting our cottage from about it, and she was saying that the fishermen were killing the seals because they were frustrated about the fish stock. She said it wouldn't have happened in years gone by, and she said that people used to believe that the seals were... She told us that she thought that people used to believe that the seals had souls of people who'd been lost at sea in them. And then that kind of set me off thinking about it. I remember telling Ross Stewart the story when I came back from my holidays, and he gave me a book called The People of the Sea, which was a collection of stories, of these Selkie stories from the early part of the 20th century. A guy had collected all these stories along the west of Ireland and up into Scotland of these creatures that could transform into humans when they came from the sea, but they were seals in the sea and humans on land. And all the stories seem to be a kind of about loss to me. They all seem to be dealing with the concept of loss, and it really resonated. And I started to dream up the story of the little girl Saoirse, who was a Selkie, but she was the last Selkie. It was just a germ of an idea, but all the stuff I was learning on Secret of Kells as we were making Secret of Kells, every time I was frustrated that there was something that we couldn't do in Secret of Kells, I said, oh well, I'll get it right on Song of the Sea. So Song of the Sea was tipping away in sketchbooks and on the back burner all through Secret of Kells.
So at that point, when the Secret of Kells came out, Paul, you were talking before about having your next thing ready to go. You had the germ of what it was going to be, but not necessarily the setup to make it happen.
And it's funny too, I think you talk about that, making the Secret of Kells and it being all hands on deck, and we didn't have anything in development because we were all so busy just making sure that we were able to finish that film. But I think had we tried to run a development department at the same time, we probably wouldn't have finished the Secret of Kells, I think. And then what we'd learned, because, you know, we ended up shipping some animation, literally animation paper to, you know, Brazil and Hungary in order to get the film finished with like great studios there, when we weren't that daunted by, I think there was 5 production territories for Song of the Sea. So I think it was Denmark, Luxembourg, France, Ireland and Belgium. So everybody making the same film. But it's a paradox because it actually gives the director a huge amount of freedom when you don't have the money coming from one source, but from many different sources, lots of like-minded small indie studios all kind of working together to tell one story. That gives you tremendous freedom. And that's why you don't end up with the babysitter kind of feeling of, you know, somebody with a huge bunch of money going, oh, this better be a huge hit or we're in massive trouble. If you've got a lot of people taking smaller risks, it means that you can be a bit riskier with your storytelling and really tackle loss in a way. I mean, that's something that I'm really proud of, is that the character of Ben, in order to truly love and embrace his sister, has to let go of his mother. And that's a really, really beautiful storytelling, and it's something that I think you could only have done in that way.
Can't you stay too, Mum? Please?
My son, remember me in your stories and in your songs. Know that I will always love you. Always.
Tom, you talked about how you went on holiday and found the story of Song of the Sea. Are you actively looking for cultural folklore stories?
When I got the idea for Song of the Sea, at the time even had the idea that we could make 3. I thought it would be nice to make 3 Irish folklore films, and I hadn't settled on what the third one would be at the time, but I had the notion that it would be nice to make to make 3. So it was very conscious. By the time we were making Wolfwalkers, we were consciously thinking of a story that would fit with Song of the Sea and Secret of Kells. But Secret of Kells, I think, was very much like self-referential. It was like a story about artists trying to make something beyond what they imagined they could be able to make in the times that they were trying to make it in and everything. So that was kind of a very much a student film at some level, or a film of people learning to be filmmakers. And then Song of the Sea was trying to take some of the themes and ideas from Secret of Kells, and I think I was just swimming in that water then for the first 20 years or so of Cartoon Saloon. The 3 films that I was directing or co-directing were all based on Irish folklore, and they all kind of, one fed into the other. Like the idea for one, or ideas from one, would feed into the next one. So it was pretty conscious, I guess, when I look back on it. But at the same time, it's kind of interesting that we never imagined, like we never felt confident that we'd end up with 3 at the end. It was just sort of like a pipe dream for a long time, you know. So it's amazing to see the trilogy finished, as it were, you know.
And then, were I to sit and predict what film I thought you'd go on to make after that, I'd have lost my money fairly quickly. Other people will have read Deborah Ellis's The Breadwinner and not thought, let's turn this into an animated movie. And yet, you did.
Yeah, I would be driving into work, listening to the news in the mornings and listening to what was going on in Afghanistan and hearing about, women who didn't, certainly weren't allowed to drive, weren't allowed to go outside, weren't allowed to have jobs. Widows collectives who were, had bakeries, and that was being, taken away from them at the time. So I was just really aware, just by the fact that I was, a woman who was driving into work on my own to help run a company, that I suppose I was coming from a place of tremendous privilege. And also, again, being in Ireland, I don't take that privilege for granted. My mother was a midwife in the 1960s when women who gave birth to children outside of wedlock were treated like second-class citizens, and children who were seen as, illegitimate, that horrendous word, were literally institutionalized well into the, the 80s and 90s. So, I mean, if you have a small company that can take risks with, co-producing partners who are like-minded, then why the hell not?
Who are you and why were you staring at me? What is your name?
My name?
I know you from somewhere.
No, I wasn't.
Wasn't what?
You don't know me.
I do know you.
No.
I do know you. You're Barwana.
I'm not.
I am Shasia, remember? From school?
Shasia?
I had long hair then, but so did you. Don't tell anyone. Here's your cap.
Absolutely love that. An extraordinary film as well. I just wonder, do you feel the response to that film? Do you still feel that seep through?
I do, yeah. It was broadcast because again, we wanted to make sure that it was made accessible in Afghanistan. So it was put on Afghan TV in the 2 national languages of Afghanistan. And so that made it a situation where a lot of people got to see it that might not otherwise have gotten to see it. And in recent years, we've had an influx, of course, of refugees from Afghanistan, and a lot of women that I've met weren't aware where the film was made or how it came about or anything like that, but felt it was their film and their story. And so in more recent years, I've met all kinds of Afghan women, including animators and artists, who are inspired by it, and they themselves are then the inspiration for it. It's sad to see that they have to pursue their careers outside of their country, but they're there and they're making work, and their voices are becoming stronger and clearer, and they have tremendous bravery to them. So yeah, I continue to see, unfortunately, that story is relevant. I wish it wasn't,
I mean, we're coming to the end of our time. I could interrogate you for hours and hours and hours. I just wonder then, if I'd have found the 3 of you under that tree in 1997 that we talked about right at the start, and told you where you were all now, you wouldn't have seen this coming.
We'd be delighted, I'd say, but yeah, I think we would have been surprised. I definitely think there was a long period where it was something we were going to do and then go and get real jobs, and then over the time it became obvious this was our real job and that's what we were going to be doing for our careers. But yeah, there's an exhibition for the Puff and Rock series in the local library here, and my little granddaughter is 6 years old now, and I reflect a lot when I think that my son was a small kid when we started the studio, and now I have a 6-year-old granddaughter who's enjoying the series that we created back then, and it's still going. It's nice, that generational feeling. You feel like you're passing something on to the next generation, which is nice, you know.
I can't thank you enough for coming on this podcast and helping us be a tiny part of your 25th birthday celebrations. One thing we ask of all of our guests, just before I let you go, is to dig into the STUDIOCANAL catalogue and just pick something to recommend to others from there. And I know we've pre-warned you of this, so you've all picked something. Can I start with you, Paul? A man with so much charming Irish animation to his name. What nice, charming film did you pick?
It was a double bill you asked for, and I was looking it up, and I love Blood Simple because I think I saw that in the cinema, and that's there. So it's not an animated film, but I just really loved that film by Coen Brothers. And then I picked another one called Ran by Kurosawa, because I haven't seen it all the way through, so I was imagining a double bill where I could go see something familiar and something that I haven't seen, because Ran is so visually, it's like an animated film or something, or it's very influential. His cinematography and the way he sets things up and his scene setting is so kind of almost illustrative sometimes.
I've never had a double bill before where it was because someone wanted to watch the second half of the film. I love that.
I've only ever seen clips, or I've only ever seen it caught like halfway through in the TV. Like I switched on the TV when I was younger, and there's that film I keep meaning to see, and I only saw the bit of it. So I want to see the whole thing in the cinema sometime.
I understand. Tom, what did you pick for us?
Okay, so I'm going to go with Ernest and Celestine, which is a beautiful animated film from France that is based on these beautiful Belgian picture books, and it's a big influence on my next movie, and it's a really lovely example of the charm of hand-drawn animation. So I think everyone should check out Ernest and Celestine. And
Nora, if we can round off with you, is it a film you've seen all the way through?
I have seen Moby Dick quite a few times from childhood. This is the John Huston mid-50s film with starring Gregory Peck. And I just love, it's black and white. I absolutely love it. I love the mannered performances, especially from Gregory Peck. And also, I guess most times when I'm directing and I have to when something goes wrong and something, I always feel like Ahab looking out and to my crew, kind of thinking I'm going to lash myself to the whale, which is usually the feature film that's in production at the time. But which is a really positive way, I guess, to look at directing. But that would be my recommendation.
Nora, Tom and Paul, thank you so much for joining us on the STUDIOCANAL podcast, and a very happy birthday to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Moby Dick, Blood Simple, Ran, The Secret of Kells, Song of the Sea and The Breadwinner are all available on the STUDIOCANAL Presents channel on Prime Video, Apple TV Plus and ITVX. Now it's time for our regular news update from the world of STUDIOCANAL. Filming is now underway on Huntington, a revenge thriller that's taken loose inspiration from the much-loved 1949 classic Kind Hearts and Coronets. Huntington is written and directed by John Patton Ford, who made the acclaimed Emily the Criminal with Aubrey Plaza a couple of years back. The cast is now confirmed to be led by Glenn Powell, Margaret Qualley and Ed Harris, and we'll have more on the film as we hear it. A heads up too on a recent cinema release that's now available to watch at home. Sting is a film we talked about in a recent episode of STUDIOCANAL Presents, and it's now available to buy and rent from digital platforms. A DVD and Blu-ray release has been set for the 19th of August. Heading to DVD, Blu-ray and 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray for the first time is Orca the Killer Whale. This 1977 horror from Michael Anderson is joining the cult classics line of disc releases. It's enjoyed a brand new 4K restoration and sees Richard Harris and, well, a very angry whale. The disc is released on the 2nd of September. Finally, just to confirm what I mentioned in the last episode, both Paddington and Paddington 2 are heading back to cinemas this autumn, and they'll be playing in the UK from the 11th of October. Then, of course, Paddington in Peru follows on the 8th of November. I'll be back soon with the next episode of Studio Canal Presents. Until the next time, to get all the news on Studio Canal films as it happens, and to find out more about the ITVX, Apple TV and Prime Video channels, you can visit www.studiocanal.co.uk or follow Studio Canal at Studio Canal UK on X, Instagram and TikTok. For now, I'm just off to get a bit of Cartoon Saloon's birthday cake. Ta-ta for now.